The Portuguese in India, a story of adventure, power, and legacy. History remembers the Portuguese in India not only as conquerors or traders, but as dreamers who defied oceans, risked their lives in fragile wooden ships, and carved out a piece of empire thousands of miles away from home. They came not merely in search of spices and wealth, but also out of obsession, faith, and a burning desire for glory. They were the first Europeans to arrive in India and, tellingly, the last to leave, departing only in 1961 when Goa, Daman, and Diu were annexed into the Republic of India. Their story is filled with ambition, betrayal, courage, violence, and also unexpected cultural fusions. The Portuguese did not just come to India, they imprinted themselves into its soil, its cuisine, its architecture, and even its faith. This thesis unfolds their journey, from the bold navigators who braved the seas to the viceroys who governed Goa like kings, from the missionaries who sought to save souls to the artisans who left behind filigreed wonders. It is a story where every wave of the Arabian Sea carried both promise and peril, and where an empire of the sea was both born and broken. Chapter 1. The Renaissance Spirit and the Call of the Sea. The 15th century in Europe was a time of restless energy. The Renaissance spirit had awakened human curiosity, urging scholars to rediscover ancient wisdom and sailors to test the boundaries of the world. For centuries, Indian spices, pepper, cinnamon, cloves, had been as prized as gold in Europe. Yet they reached European markets only through a long chain of Arab and Venetian middlemen. The rise of the Ottoman Empire tightened this stranglehold. Prices soared, access narrowed, and an idea took hold. What if one could bypass these intermediaries and sail directly to India? It was in Portugal, a small kingdom at Europe's edge, that this dream found its champions. Prince Henry the Navigator. Prince Henry of Portugal, 1394 to 1460, though never a sailor himself, became the patron saint of exploration. From his base at Sagres, he sponsored voyages down Africa's coast, searching for a passage east. For Henry, the mission was not merely about profit, it was also about faith. By reaching India, he believed, Portugal could spread Christianity and strike at the Muslim dominance of trade. His obsession lit the first spark of a fire that would one day illuminate the shores of Calicut. The Treaty of Tordesillas, 1494. When Spain and Portugal began competing in overseas ventures, they turned to the Pope for arbitration. The Treaty of Tordesillas, 1494, divided the non-Christian world between the two. Portugal received the East, while Spain was granted the West. It was a decision that would shape global history. Spain would focus on the Americas, while Portugal looked toward Africa and Asia, toward India. Dias and da Gama, breaking the ocean barrier. In 1487, Bartholomew Dias rounded the Cape of Good Hope, proving that the Indian Ocean could be reached from the Atlantic. Though he did not press onward to India, his voyage electrified Europe. 10 years later, Vasco da Gama undertook the Great Mission. In July 1497, he sailed from Lisbon with 4 ships. After storms, scurvy, and exhaustion, his fleet reached Calicut in May 1498, less than a year later. Guided by an Arab pilot, da Gama entered the Malabar coast. He had achieved what generations of dreamers only imagined. Europe had reached India by sea. The moment was not just geographical triumph, it was the dawn of European imperialism in Asia. Chapter 2. The Rise of a Maritime Empire. India, in the late 15th century, was politically fragmented. The mighty Bahmani Sultanate had broken into successor states. The Vijayanagar kingdom, though powerful inland, had no serious navy. Arab traders dominated the seas, but their ships were no match for European cannon fire. The Chinese, who once sailed grand fleets under Admiral Zheng He, had retreated into isolation. Into this vacuum sailed the Portuguese. Superior ships and firepower. Portuguese carracks and caravels were larger, sturdier, and armed with cannons. They were not mere trading vessels, but floating fortresses. Their soldiers, clad in armor, carried matchlocks and muskets unfamiliar to Indian battlefields. On both sea and land, they were formidable. Conquests and settlements. In quick succession, the Portuguese established key footholds. Cochin and Calicut as early spice trade bases. Goa, 1510. Captured by Afonso de Albuquerque from the Sultan of Bijapur, it became the jewel of Portuguese India. Diu and Daman, secured after fierce naval battles with the Gujarat Sultanate and Ottoman allies, giving them strategic command over the Arabian Sea. From these outposts, they stitched together a maritime empire stretching from East Africa to Malacca. Administration Portuguese India was governed by a viceroy, appointed for 3 years. Beneath him were captains and administrators such as the Vedor da Fazenda, who oversaw trade revenues and fleets. They imposed the Cartas system, a permit required by all Asian ships to sail. Without it, vessels risked being seized or sunk. It was not commerce as usual. It was commerce by coercion. Chapter 3. The Clash of Worlds. The arrival of the Portuguese was both awe-inspiring and disruptive. For Indian merchants, it was shocking to see foreigners so heavily armed. For rulers, it was bewildering to witness outsiders dictating terms at sea. Trade as conquest. Arab merchants, who had long dominated the spice routes, now found their ships burned and their livelihoods shattered. Indian rulers, fragmented and often at odds, struggled to unite against the newcomers. The Portuguese were not content to be mere traders. They waged war for monopoly. Pepper was not simply bought, it was taken or controlled by threat. Missionary zeal. Alongside merchants and soldiers came missionaries. The most famous was Saint Francis Xavier, who tirelessly preached across Goa, Mylapore, and beyond. For the Portuguese crown, saving souls was as important as securing spices. Churches rose along the coast, and conversions swelled. Catholicism took deep roots in Goa and parts of Kerala, enduring to this day. Goa, Rome of the East. Under Portuguese rule, Goa blossomed into a city of contrasts. Grand cathedrals with gilded altars stood beside bustling spice markets. Local artisans mastered new crafts, filigree, foliage designs, and jeweled metalwork. Portuguese introduced cashew, tobacco, and even bread making, subtly reshaping Indian cuisine. Yet the Portuguese also imposed the Inquisition in Goa, a dark chapter marked by religious persecution and forced conformity. For many, their presence was both a blessing and a burden. Chapter 4. Decline and Resistance. No empire lasts forever. By the 17th century, Portuguese supremacy began to erode. 1. Manpower and resources. Portugal was small. Its population could not sustain an empire spanning continents. 2. Rival Europeans. The Dutch East India Company and the English East India Company brought better organization and deeper coffers. They seized markets, routes, and eventually dominance. 3. Corruption. Many Portuguese officials pursued private profit over crown interests, weakening unity. 4. Indian resistance. Mughal emperors, Marathas, and regional sultanates increasingly challenged Portuguese control. By 1640, Portugal had lost Malacca, Hormuz, and many strongholds. In India, they clung to Goa, Daman, and Diu. These would remain Portuguese until December 1961, when Indian forces reclaimed them. The once mighty empire of the seas had become a fragment of its former self. Yemk. Chapter 5: Legacy of the Portuguese in India. Though their empire declined, their influence endured. Religion. Catholic communities flourished in Goa, Kerala, and Mangalore. The Basilica of Bom Jesus, housing the relics of St. Francis Xavier, remains a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Architecture. Their churches and forts blended European styles with Indian artistry. Interiors dazzled with wood carvings and painted ceilings. Cuisine. The humble chili, cashew, and potato, all staples today, were Portuguese introductions. Vindaloo, a Goan classic, traces its roots to a Portuguese dish. Language and culture. Portuguese words: almari, cupboard; mestre, teacher; pau, bread, entered Indian tongues. A hybrid Indo-Portuguese culture was born. Their legacy was thus double-edged: exploitation and enrichment, domination and dialogue. Conclusion. The story of the Portuguese in India is a story of paradoxes. They came as outsiders but became part of India's fabric. They brought violence but also beauty, coercion but also creativity. Their empire may have fallen, but their legacy lives on, in Goa's churches, in the rhythm of Mangalorean Catholic hymns, in the fiery taste of Goan curries. Above all, their story is human. It is the tale of sailors who braved oceans, rulers who gambled with power, priests who sought to save souls, and Indians who resisted, adapted, or embraced. The Portuguese were the first Europeans to come and the last to leave. Between those two moments lies a saga that reshaped not only India, but the world itself. Thank you for watching my video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.